the headline is, there's always money. Everyone's going to tell you there is no money. So every government, every contract, every business I've ever talked to, every person starts with, there's no money. You know, I can't afford, or we've got no money, but, you got to not believe that. That's just rubbish. So never take any notice of that. There is thousands, millions of pounds.
Guys, we're back here for another episode of The Real Coach Show, and I'm joined today by MamaJ. I love that. By the way, so amazing. And we met in guest on the podcast, John Meese, his program, Sold Out Coach Club. We were both learning from him, continuing our own education in that program. And it was just a wonderful thing to be able to connect. And this is something that I think is going to be very helpful for everyone because you've got an amazing story by the sounds of it. And I don't even know half of it. And you've got a lot of experience in areas that people might not have. We're going to talk about prison, presumably, and how that feeds into what you do as a coach now. And so I want to start off, like I always do, by asking the question, what was it in your life that happened or that you solved or that got brought up some way or the other that had you solve a problem that was like, oh my goodness, I solved this so well. I think I can help other people with this, because that's usually how we become coaches. So I'm curious if that was your entry into coaching, or if not, tell me what it was.
Nice. Well, funnily enough, I never wanted to be a coach. I'm a recovering project manager and a lot of things happened all at the same time. And I ended up going on a high ticket coaching program, not to be a coach, but to have a life experience. So I was just like, okay, well, this is something interesting. I've been in IT the whole of my life. I was like a round peg in a square hole or whatever it is. And I thought, well, this would be really interesting. And I wasn't actually interested in coaching at all, but it was a great experience. And I tried a bit of coaching after that. I sort of didn't really believe myself. And then what happened was I met someone who was a recovering addict. And I started working with him, just volunteering for his social enterprise and helping him out in university and things like that. And I met all these people with addictions, and accidentally I started coaching them. And then I realized, oh, I can do this. You know, I like this. And so that's when I really, really stepped into that role.
My goodness. Okay. So I love stories like this, because it's usually not like I graduated university and I decided to become a coach. That's not even what people think about these days, or ever before. And so you went through this program. You didn't believe in yourself, which I think is a really interesting part of coaching. And I totally feel that when I'm not 100% in what I'm doing, I'm like, I don't know if I can stand behind this, because conviction is so important. So what was it then about the people that you were working with that you were doing that was like, is just such a good fit for you, that gave you that conviction to carry on?
Yeah. So now when I reflect on it, it was a few things. So one was that I wasn't coaching. I was just being authentic and listening and letting them talk and talking about the thing that I teach, which is how, reality is created inside our own minds. But I wasn't coaching them. I was just with them. And so I wasn't hiding behind anything, and I wasn't having to be anything. I was just being me. And then I saw them change, and they were getting results. They were coming off drugs. They were mending relationships. They were getting jobs. And I thought, I'm quite good at this. I don't know what it is, but I'm quite good at it. So I'd like to do this, and help people. And the other part, Kurt, was that they actually showed me. So I believed in them. I really believed in them. I saw that they had power. I saw that they were resilient, amazing. They had so much potential. I didn't see that for myself. And working with them, eventually I thought, it must be true for me. So I saw my own resilience and power and creativity through their eyes.
Wow. Okay. So when I wish that we could just coach on that basis always and still build a business around it.
Yeah.
How have you seen that applying to sort of stepping into the role as a coach and having a coaching business? Have you just taken some of that? Like, look, this isn't necessarily a coaching arrangement. I'm here to listen, help. Like, how do you bridge that when it's so naturally helpful the way you do it authentically versus, hey, now we're intentionally stepping into a coaching relationship. You're paying me for this. How do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Initially, I actually went into just working with people with addictions and then eventually prison. So my clients that I was coaching, I could do exactly that. Be authentic, listen, mirror back their own potential and resilience, because they weren't the people who were paying. The people who were paying were like the government or the local government or whatever, the contracts. In a coaching arrangement one-to-one with a person who's paying me, yeah, I found that bridge difficult at first. Fast forward now, 15 years on, I have got an answer to that. But at the time, I think I still got tied up with this idea that it has to be worth it. If I'm charging a lot of money, it has to be worth it. There has to be an outcome. Now, I absolutely know 100% the transformation is available. They have to do the work. I'm the conduit. And now I stand in that power. But when I was first coaching, I found that really difficult. And I found it difficult to charge people for it as well.
Do you remember what it was that flipped the switch for you? Was it just doing it over and over, or was there something else to it?
Yeah. So first of all, I ran my social enterprise for 10 years. So I got used to raising money, raising funding, having private investors, getting contracts and so on. And I didn't ever think that was for me. I thought it was for the people that I was working with, serving. And when I decided to give that up at the beginning of this year, the switch that flipped then was, oh, I have to take care of myself. Because one of the reasons why I had to give that up is that it wasn't sustainable, because I didn't look after myself so much, because it was always about the people I was serving. And this year I realized, I have to take care of myself. Otherwise I can't do any of that work. I might as well go and work at, Tesco or somewhere.
Wow. Okay. That's really interesting, especially because I think there's such this hustle culture. And I've noticed it really creeping into coaching too. And I think because marketers have become quote unquote coaches now, if you're really good at marketing, you're now a coach.
Yeah.
If you can convince people to do something, to buy your program, you're now a coach. And I don't think a lot of people understand the weight that can be carried with that. I felt that in dad work, my last group coaching program. I had like 35 guys at one point, and I was bearing the weight of kind of the hardest parts of their life. And I was good at that. I'm, uniquely gifted at that. And still, it was crushing. And I didn't look after myself in that. And it led to what I would maybe classify as burnout. And I dropped it all. And so now I know I'm going through a season where I will eventually be able to learn more and hold more and be able to help more people in a different way. But this is the consequence if you don't see that it's wearing you out. So maybe talk about that, moving on from the social enterprise and sort of the facts behind that as well, because I'm curious what that enterprise was and now the specific type of coaching you're offering now.
Yeah, sure. Well, initially the social enterprise was set up to deliver a specific wellbeing program into prison. So I worked with initially the people with recovery issues, addiction issues in prison, and then the wider population. So violent crimes, aggression. I've worked with sex offenders, all sorts. And there are two things, and I had to learn these things while I was teaching it, if you like. So the first thing is, it doesn't really matter what the framework is. Everybody has an essence, a spiritual essence, a thriving within them that lives within them. And we all see that in different ways. I know that you see that as God. I talk about the universe and essence and so on, nature. We all see it in our different ways, but regardless to how we see it, there is an essence. It's spiritual in nature. It can't be harmed. It can't be broken. And the light that we shine from that essence is our life's work, right? Now, I was teaching people that, but I wasn't walking the talk for myself because I was overworking. I was working for very little, all of those things. And I actually did break down. I had a breakdown during running my social enterprise, which you would think would teach me, but it didn't quite teach me. But what it did teach me was that you have to take care of yourself, for sure. I didn't realize as well, Kurt, that we have so many conditioned thinking, so many social constructs that we live within, and money is a big one. The lack of money, the scarcity, the worry, all of that, it's a big one. And then, you're greedy if you want money and so on. And I had a lot of money wounds, I had a lot of all of that I had to work through really to come out the other side. How I see it now and how I encourage other people now is when everybody should be compensated for their work. When you're carrying a light, when you're really out there at the coalface, trying to help people really live their best lives, whatever population that is, of course you should be compensated, because how can you keep the light on if you're not compensated properly? If you're not actually walking the talk, believing that light should be looked after. If you're not doing that, and that there's obviously your practice, whatever your practice is, there's your sort of basic needs, and money comes into that, and it's all part of it. So spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically, you have to take care of yourself. You have to exercise. You have to feed yourself properly, and you have to look after yourself financially. But it took me a while to learn that, all of those things come into it. That's not what I taught people in prison. I just woke them up. I woke them up to their true essence and to the fact that we have a thought-created reality, and that they don't have to believe everything that's in their heads. And because it was heartfelt work, because it was, some people called it God's work, because it was like guided work, I just thought that would sustain me. But actually we live in the form. And so there are other things that we need to sustain us. So I don't know if I went off track a little bit there.
No, that was really good. It opened up a number of things. And by the way, I've got a tattoo on my hand that says "Wake Up," because I want to constantly be reminded when I'm typing, if I have to look down, that, oh, right, presence. So anyway, I like that you said that, because that's huge in my life as well. Before we get into, actually, I've got plenty of questions coming, but I want to know, first of all, what is the coaching you're doing now, just so I can have some context moving forward. And then I want to talk about one of the money things you just said.
Okay. So, after I closed my social enterprise at the beginning of this year, I thought, what am I going to do? Like, if I'm not the prison lady, who am I? I had this passion and this role and this purpose for so long. And then it felt like I'm nobody now, So my ego was damaged with that, and I had to get over myself. And I reflected for a while and thought, I could do this, I could do that. And then I woke up one day and I thought, what does everybody ask me about? It doesn't matter where I go in the world. I speak in, at events around the world. It doesn't matter where I am. People come up to me and they say, how do you work in prison? How do you get to work with the homeless people? How do you work with the refugees? They asked me about the underserved populations. And I thought, well, I can teach people that. So I thought, well, do you know what? I'll just teach people what I've learned in the last 15 years. I'll put that together in some sort of program, which I did. And I ran a pilot of that. And people were just like all of a sudden booking calls in my diary. It was like all very aligned. And then I met John. And John helped me to shape that into a group coaching program.
And who are the people who are joining these cohorts?
So, they are people, usually people have had some sort of transformational shift themselves. So they see life differently and they very much want to teach other people, what they've learned or how to live better or how to have a happier life. And, often they want to solve some sort of social problem. So they want to, bring this work to people who wouldn't normally access it. There's my favorite people to work with. And they are usually people who feel less like they can get paid and they feel more insecure about their work because other coaches, other places don't see this type of work as a business, but I can tell you it very much is a business. And so I help them with that. I help them get past those things and I help them to understand where they can get funding from and how they can get funding or how they can take on clients that will fund the thing that they want to do and so on.
Wow, what a very unique intersection of skills. And I want to talk about the funding part in a second, because I think there's this whole world that I don't know anything about, that other people probably haven't heard much about in terms of getting those contracts from government or organizations. We've had a couple of people on the podcast who have mentioned corporate coaching, and I'm like, ooh, that's another interesting one that I've never done. And so it's so nice to be able to like expand this, what even is coaching, that I never would have even thought. But I do want to touch, because I think it will help a lot of coaches when you're charging and you're kind of the product. And I wonder if you understand what I say. Like when you're a coach, a lot of people want what you have, a lifestyle you've built, a skill that you've got. And in a way, there is no other transfer other than what you're giving, kind of that light that you're talking about. And for me, like that was an uncomfortable sort of thing. I'm charging a lot of money for what I'm doing and I'm selling you me in a sense. And there was a weird sense of like worth and value. And you mentioned identity. That happened to me as well. Like if I'm not the dad work guy, then who am I? So let's talk about the money wounds and just, you mentioned that you have had to get over yourself, I think is what you said, or your ego was hurt, but you were able to move on. Do you want to talk about the money wounds and moving on and sort of feeling worth charging as a coach for a little bit?
Yeah. So I think first of all, I had to accept that there were some money wounds and that my mental framework for being charged was inaccurate. So for charging was inaccurate because I thought how is it about my worth, which is what you're saying, I'm charging for me and like, am I worth that much? So first of all, I had to accept that actually that's not a given. There's a problem there. There's a thing to look at there. Once I accepted that, then I, started doing some work. I did some courses. I, did Ken Honda's course where he talks about money wounds. I read stuff about money and I started to realize that I noticed that when I think about money or thought about money, when I read money, when I thought about pricing, my level of consciousness would drop. So I would generally live in a higher level of consciousness, in a positive, abundant state of mind. But when it came to money, even looking at a spreadsheet, it would drop. And I noticed it one day and I thought, oh, that's the problem, because I'm trying to fix this from a lower level of consciousness. And you can't, like you can't fix it from there. So that was a good clue. And then being willing to address that and look at that and, expose myself in some way to saying, is it about my worth or is it about something else? And where I am now, and I think it's a lifelong journey in many ways, but where I am now is that, just to say as well, it's not helped as well by people outside of the coaching industry who say, well, you're teaching people what they know already or what they've already got within, so how dare you charge? Right? If they've already got it, which is why I always say you've already got it, why are you charging for it? And people come along with the plumber, the plumber knows where to hit the boiler to make it work again. But that didn't really work for me because I thought, is this is an ethical sort of question. And where I am now is that I think that we take on a load of conditioned thinking from our parents, from other people, from society, from what we think money is. Is it the root of all evil, or is it the access to freedom? And money is actually spiritual as well. Like, money is a form of spiritual, like a shoe is, like I am, like a fan is. It's not a thing. It's a form of spiritual. Man made money, but he made it from the formless. And so actually it's a resource, and that resource is useful. And I at first had to tell myself, if I make a lot of money, that means I can help more people. So that carried me for quite a long time. It's like, well, it's okay for me to charge because I'm a good person, and that means I'm going to help more people. But now I've come to see, like, it's all made up. It doesn't really matter. So there is the argument of, if I charge somebody £200 for a coaching session, which for some people is quite a lot of money, I could be for a program. If I charge them £200 for my program, I'm vastly undercharging. And some people will not see the value of that program. They won't even get as much out of that program because of how low it is. If I'm charging, let's say, £2,000 or £200,000, that changes how people are going to interact with that program. All of a sudden, you've got more commitment, you've got more engagement, not always, because, people have lives and whatever, but they see it differently. They see the value differently. And it's that switches their mindset into looking within. So for 200 quid, they're just going to go, oh yeah, it's nice, it's a bit airy fairy, whatever. For 200 grand, they're going to say, right, I need to get something from this, and they're more all in. And it's that actually helps them to find that path for themselves. So that's helped me to be able to say, yeah, it's okay, because these are all the switches that people need to be able to look where they need to look, which is within.
That is so true. And I saw that myself. I have had low ticket communities. I've had low ticket men's groups, and they're great and they're good. And for some people, that's all they can afford. And that's great. And so I'm glad that there are options like that. But I noticed my program for dad work was $4,000 to $5,000. And at the end, it was for like a 16-week program. Before that, I was selling it for a year. So either way, it's a good chunk of money because it was collected up front. And people were so much more bought in because it hurt a little. And some of the guys I worked with, it was some money, but not like a lot. But some guys scraped everything together. And I would feel bad at first going like, whoa, if you're really struggling paying for this, like, let's work something out. But those were the guys who just went like rocket ships because they're like, I need this and I know it's going to work and I need this to work because I just spent everything on it. And there's something about like exactly the money piece is not just the self-worth, which again, I wish that I knew this sooner, but it actually is a tool in coaching. And I would talk to guys, especially even in, one of the most common things for men with wives is I have to talk to my wife about this. Totally fair. And I would coach them in that moment before they had signed up to say, basically, if you have made this decision, great, you can talk to her and whatever. But if you're still undecided, why don't you decide first so that you're not then influenced by that? But anyway, it all comes down to the package itself is part of the coaching experience. Yeah. And some people take that further and some people don't. But at least even there, you're coaching people, which I think is amazing. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about finding contracts, working with government organizations, prisons. What is that world all about? And if I have something, a program that I think can serve people in one of those communities, how do I even start to think about this? And I'll just say for context here, I was one toe in these waters. I have a man who worked with the inmates at, I think, a prison in Minnesota, and he was running them through the anger course that I created with dad work. And he still sends me testimonials from that, from the people in the prison, which is like the best testimonials I've ever got because it's free and they're just going through it and they're getting value. So I have like a little bit of a heartbeat in this area that I'm like, could I have done more there? Anyway, so all that being said, can you tell us what that world of coaching is like and how to even think about that and get involved in that if that's on our hearts?
Yeah, sure. And just to your previous point, me too. I have my low ticket and even free programs. I still have a distance learning program that we send to people in prison, and I have a team of volunteers that write to them. And, so, and I love that I have those things. And if someone can't afford something, there's a way for them to get help and to get started. So me too. Yeah, I think, the headline is there's always money. Everyone's going to tell you there is no money. So every government, every contract, every business I've ever talked to, every person starts with there's no money. I can't afford, or we've got no money, but you got to not believe that. That's just rubbish. So never take any notice of that. There is thousands, millions of pounds. Sadly, here in the UK, there's a system, which I won't name, but there's a system where prison contracts all go through, and millions every year get wasted because nobody knows how to claim it. And the people who run it at the top will say, come on, but it's so convoluted, it's so big, it's so difficult. No, and the prisons don't know how to use it, and the people applying don't know how to use it. So, loads of money goes to waste because of that. So that's the proof, that's the evidence that there is always money. I always thought there's always money. You've just got to find it, and then you've just got to know how to get it. That's what it is. And you've got to be persistent. There's going to be loads of no's. There's going to be loads of times when, it's a dead end. But if you have got something that you're passionate about and it can solve a social problem, there will be a pot of money somewhere that you can get. You just have to do your research. Now, I've had a few contracts. I'm not great at writing those things, but some people are. And find those people, team up with those people who like writing bids and know how use ChatGPT, that could probably help you. There's ways, there's money, and there's ways to get the money. You just got to navigate that path. And I would start with what is it that I'm doing? What am I passionate about? The problem that I want to fix. And then I would search that on the internet, who funds this? And just keep going. And you'll be surprised. Sometimes it's a contract or a government. Sometimes it's a philanthropist. Might be even a private funding. So you can, I had plenty of private funding by just talking to people about what I was passionate about. People would say, oh, I know so-and-so that they might be interested in funding you. I had my research funded by that route, for instance. Somebody else got in touch with me. They said, I know a business owner who's at the tax year end and they want to offload some money. But they want to send it to a charity that they trust, because they don't want it to go into big pockets sort of thing. And so I got some funding that way. So I would say in the simplest terms is know what problem you're solving, be really clear about that, and then talk to people about it and be open to where is the money rather than there is no money, have that abundant mindset. And that will carry you a long way.
That's so interesting. What are some of the problems that you've seen that need funding or that you work with people who had funding, or even a little bit more about what you were doing? Because I'm thinking about this and I just don't even know. When this guy who shared the anger course with the inmates he was working with told me about this, he's like, well, we've got some sort of meeting coming up with the district of all the prisons in this area. And I don't know what there was, maybe 20 or 30. He's like, I'm going to maybe talk to them about bringing you in and getting this program done up for the prison specifically. It's like, what? That even exists? I had no idea. And so like that was just a tiny microcosm of, I think, again, like Minnesota prisons or something like that. But there's nations and states and, country, like all of the rest of this kind of stuff that I don't even know. And to your point, apparently nobody else knows how to do it either. So like, what are these problems? I like just a quick example as I'm maybe giving you time to stir up some more examples and people listening as well. I've always thought like men's group really changed my life. Sitting in a circle with 10 guys week after week after week, going deep, being challenged, having to deal with all of the shadows and inner wounding that I have. I've always thought that that would be so helpful to the people who live on the streets around me. And how would that work? And would that be more effective than, what the government's doing now, which clearly isn't very effective because it's not really helping. So anyway, are there other problems that people are like, wait, I'm a mindset coach, but could I be doing this? What have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, the big problem is that there are certain things that get funded over and over again. So you're up against those things. So in our work, for instance, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy programs, are way more funded than our programs, more spiritual, psychologically spiritual programs, psychospiritual. So that there is a problem there. I see that. But instead of looking for that problem, you look for where are the solutions? Who are the little people who might fund me? Other things, for instance, are teaching people to read in prison, educational services. There are some charities here that storybook dads, they're called, and storybook moms, and they go in, they teach people. Actually, what they do is they get the dads to write stories for their children, and then they send those tapes home to their children. I mean, that's a beautiful project, right? So if I was storybook dads and storybook mums, I would be looking for what's the interest from the government. So the interest from the government is that there's evidence that offenders who maintain contact with their families are less likely to reoffend when they get out of prison, and they're less likely to struggle with mental health problems in prison, and that saves the government money. So you look at what you do, and then you look for how does it fit in? So if I was still doing my prison work, I would be, now the thing is about protecting the public. So I worked with the actual perpetrators, but I would be saying the reason why this is useful and why you should fund it is because ultimately this protects the public, because you're having people coming out rehabilitated, want to be active citizens, etc., are going to be entrepreneurs often, and actually that protects the public. So you have to angle your work to what the needs of the government or the local places are.
Got it. Okay, that is super helpful. And especially with government, you're probably looking for research-backed outcomes combined with whatever the message of the day is. And, like it or not.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I did want to add to that, Kurt, sorry to cut you there. Evidence everything, even if it's just a case study. So if you're doing any sort of work, really, even just your normal coaching work, have some way of evidencing the journey. It doesn't have to be massive outcomes. It doesn't have to be transformational. It can just be that this person moved from, thinking, one of my lads, I'm thinking of, was dyslexic, couldn't read or write, learned to read because he got interested in what we were doing. I gave him a book. One day he started reading it. He got a dictionary from the library and then just started helping himself and learned to read. That's quite a big outcome, but there'll be others like feeling less angry or having a closer relationship with their family. But measure your outcomes, even if it's simple at first, just to be able to say, because what these funders don't like is what I did at the beginning, which was, well, I talk to them and they change. It's like, they don't want to hear that. They want to hear hardcore evidence. But if you start with simple, like a well-being scale or your case studies, can be very, very light touch, but it shows that you've got the business sense to measure your outcomes. And then that moves you up the scale, if you like, in terms of how seriously they'll take you.
Wow. I'm so glad that we opened up this sidebar, which is kind of the main bar now. As I'm thinking about this episode, it's like, this is so fascinating. And I wonder how many more people could maybe even just add part to their business and feel great about that. And maybe, not that it would be the point, but it would probably also help your other business because you're going to learn a lot more working in this situation, I'm sure. And also people will see that you're not just the marketer who turned into a coach. It's like, no, you get it. You know how to do this. You're helping people with this. So I think there's a lot in here for people. And like I said, I never even heard of it before. So thank you so much for sharing all this. I am interested in seeing if there's anything to talk about with your shift in business to sort of private practice by the sounds of it. I know you went through John's program. Are you open to just talking about a little bit how the leads and sales and delivery works with your new program? Where are you finding people? What does the sales process look like? Because I love talking about this kind of stuff because it's demystifying it. And people think that you just get into coaching and 7 days later you're a trillionaire and like you never have to work again. And so for all the people in it struggling with it, it's not like that. It's a real business. It's hard like every other business. And I want to give people a little bit of hope that there's different ways to do things. So if you're open to it, I'd love to know, maybe just again, give us the 10x promise. Give us a 10x promise that you're solving. And then maybe just start us with where you're finding people to bring them into your world as leads.
Yeah. So my 10x promise is get paid to do the work you love.
That's
so thank you. And I say that I help socially conscious coaches who want to get paid to do the work they love. So first thing I would say is it all takes time. Don't worry about that. It just does. It's just how it works. So, I'm always measuring myself, like thinking, am I behind everyone else? Shouldn't I have been made a fortune by now? All of that. But it takes time. I would say what I've learned is you start with your own network. So you start with the thing that you're going to solve and the promise that you're going to make. The promise is I can help people get paid to do the work they love. And now I tell people about that. And the amazing thing about telling people is, first of all, if it's something that you've embodied and you feel and you've done yourself, you can talk about it for hours. I could talk about this for hours. So you never run out. You never feel false. So that's where you start. And I actually had I had 10K of donations when I started doing this work because 2 people said, we'll give you a head start. And 2 people gave me $5,000 each, right? So that I didn't even ask for it. That was just from I'm going to do this thing. I'm really excited about activating loads of socially conscious coaches, and enabling people who can't access these types of service to be able to access it through this network. And I would talk about that, and they came forward. So that's the first thing. And then what I had to do is I had to just say, this is what I'm offering, and this is how much it is, and not do anything else. I'm what they call a multi-passionate. So, I've always got 100,000 projects going and everything else. And I would get onto calls with people, and then I would be trying to judge, will there be a one-to-one client, or should I get them on my writing retreat, or should they, Now, I don't do any of that. I get people in front of me. My favorite selling is to serve people and to talk to them on a call like this and then make them an offer. If I can help them, I tell them I can help them and I make them an offer. Sometimes they say no. And like you said, sometimes I coach them through some of the objections or some of the things that might be putting them off. But if it's a no, it's a no. That's fine as well. But having my offer and having my price took a lot off my mind. So that means going back to your presence. You can be really present. You can just serve them. You can answer the questions that come up. You're not thinking about where shall I fit them and can they afford it? The first maybe dozen calls that I had, I was like constantly thinking, well, they can't afford it. Well, they can't afford it. And then people would go, oh yeah, and sign up. And I think, really? and I was charging 2,000 at that time. So I was like so shocked that people were saying yes, because I was assuming that they couldn't afford it. But we got to not make those assumptions, and you just have your price. Now, prior to working with John, if someone was in front of me and said, I thought, oh, they can't afford it, I'd go, oh, you can have it for free. Or you can have it for 500 quid or whatever. Because I didn't want anyone to lose out. But as I say, I've overcome the money wounds and everything else. And now I realize you're doing them a disservice, because you're actually assuming that they can't afford something they really want. And if they really want it, they can usually afford it. And the people who really, really, really can't, you have other things for them. So I have other offers for them. And if it's really money, then maybe there's this book, or maybe there's this resource, or maybe there's this other place to go, or maybe they're at an earlier stage. And the leads themselves, for me, it's been my network. And that's one of the things I teach people on my program is go to your network first, because they already know, like, and trust you. So, and I was really surprised. I was trying to create this other network and be visible and all these platforms. But in actual fact, near enough, 80% of my clients already knew me and had already had some sort of coaching or some sort of program from me before. And then the other 20 knew me from speaking events or from my book or whatever. No one brand new. I haven't signed anyone brand new up yet. So you have to start with your network and then be visible by talking about, celebrating your clients, as John would say, or talking about the successes, not in a bragging way, but just in a really proud way. And, I'm honored to work with these people and help them on their journey.
That is so helpful. And that is the thing that I wanted to hear the least. When I was a coach, like I wanted to build the thing so that they will come. I didn't want to have to do outreach. I didn't want to have to tell people about this. And I think that for me, it was actually the other way around for my coaching. But for the podcast business that I have now, it was exactly as you said. And so this is part of why I wanted to ask these specific questions, is because anything can work. And it's often way easier if you've built some sort of network over whatever. Now, some people just haven't. And so go start a network now, because in 2 years from now, these people will be your clients. And some of them might want to buy now. And I'll just mention on that, I got my first network or referral client for this business through LinkedIn like 2 weeks ago. And that was like, oh my goodness, it's actually working. So both can work and both can be used together. But to your point, for this particular business, every single one of my clients I knew from my previous business, or they were guests on my podcast, or they referred a friend of theirs. And it's just kept happening. And it's like, okay, great. But I want to be able to have clients on tap. I want my leads to come in when I want them to come in. And for the beginning, at least, like, that's not how it works. No. And I've had to get really comfortable not knowing. And for someone who loves control and knowing where things are happening and spreadsheets, I'm like, okay, we're just going to trust now. And that's been hard, but also very relieving for me. And I think it's also maybe one of the biggest, just one of the main reasons why building relationships with human beings is going to be the best ROI, if you can say such a crude thing, because business is so relationship. And again, I wish that I knew this beforehand, because I was all SEO and then Instagram, everyone was coming into my world. And once you don't have that, it's like, well, shoot, I don't have anyone to go out to and talk to. So anyway, I'm rambling now, but I really appreciate the fact that, like, yes, it is all about relationship. Any other points on?
Yeah, actually, you reminded me when I walked out of a job like 20 years ago and didn't have another job to go to. It was like an ethical thing. And I was like, I can't work here another day. And I walked out of the job. And then after a few days, I was like, oh yeah, shoot, I need, I need to actually earn some money. And, I was a project manager at the time, and I realized people get work through their network. Like, that's just how it works. You know, the whole golfing thing. And it's like, oh yeah, well, I don't know anyone. And so I actually started on LinkedIn then. And I thought, right, I need to do my work on LinkedIn. But what occurred to me is I do know some people, not very many, but I know some people that I'd worked with through the business, that I was pretty, you know, I didn't steal their customers or anything. It was a whole different thing. And, I got in touch with them and just said, like, I'm going out on my own. I'm doing project management. If you know of anyone, literally in the second or third phone call, someone said, oh yeah, we need someone. Like, we've got a big problem. Could you come and do this with us? Blah, blah, blah. It was like, you know, like, not even interviewed. How much do you charge? I had to sort of like, actually what I said then was, what's your budget? You know, so that helps. That's a really good way of stalling and, trying to figure that out. And, I ended up doing that sort of work for 4 years with that client. And that was just from ringing up someone I know and saying, yeah, I'm doing this now. So even if you only know 5 people and you do that, but you know way more than you think. And to your point about, yeah, I can see some people are more uncomfortable with that, than I maybe am. And you can just be you still. Like, you don't have to sell. You don't have to put on, you know, you don't have to pretend anything. Just be you the way you are. If you're more introverted, if you're more shy, if you're, you know, you're humble, you talk about it in the way that you talk about it. But one thing that's really helped me is getting on in front of the camera and doing interviews, but also doing masterclasses, just getting on, inviting people. Sometimes only 2 people turn up, but you do the masterclass anyway. You talk about one thing, you know, you do like half an hour or 45 minutes. If you're brave enough, you take questions, if you've got an audience. And, that's really helped me because that's helped my visibility. And when people see, like, they get to flavor of you, they know if they want to work with you way before they ever get in touch with you. So you have to be visible, but that doesn't mean you have to be on every platform or, you know, be in social media, which can be toxic and all of that. You just have to find your way of being visible and then consistently show up to that.
I love that. That's a great reminder. Number one, that you know someone, you know, at least one person. And the way that I did it, and I think maybe John has said the same thing in one of the hand raisers, is I just contacted everyone I knew, like everyone I'd ever talked to on Instagram, anyone who was in my phone. And I just said, hey, do you know anyone who might need this? Here's what my next step is. Do you know anyone? And 2 of those people that I asked were like, oh, the person's me. And then other people were like, oh yeah, I can send your stuff on. So that's one way that for me was less uncomfortable than being like, hey, I'm doing this now. Can I help you? Just like, well, who do you know? And that's kind of a nice thing that you can do with your relationship. So yeah, you know someone. That's a great reminder.
And I sent out an email. I've only got a really small audience. I've got less than 300 email subscribers. And John encouraged me to send out what's called a hand raiser, saying, would you like me to work as your coach to get paid to do the work you love? So would you like me to work as your coach with my 10x promise? You know, love MamaJ. And that was it. And I did not want to send that. I just thought that's so cheesy. It's horrible. I don't want to do it. I put it off for weeks. And eventually, you know, I had to do it because it's part of the thing. I did it. I could not believe how many people said, not right now, but thank you so much for asking. Like, thanked me for asking them as if, you know, I'd done them a favor. I don't know how many people said, well, you know, all the 12 all the calls that I got booked into my diary came from that. They said, "Oh yeah, me," or the follow-up one, like, "Who do you know?" And I thought, didn't they know I was doing this? Because now people are in their own lives. They don't know what you're doing, what you're up to. You think that you've told everybody, but they don't remember. So that really surprised me. And then a number of people, wrote back and told me what they were up to in their lives. And I had these great conversations with them, and they didn't turn into clients, but built the relationships. And, I just think we overcomplicate it. We're all got insecurities, but actually do the simple things, like tell people what you're doing, invite them to come into your world, and that's it, really.
So good. That's so good. What a reminder in a world of build your audience and do this and do that. And take this course and take this course. It's like, well, just talk to people. Talk to people and they know what you do. Okay, is there anything in terms of delivery? Like, I'm assuming it's a cohort if you went through John's thing, which people have heard from John a couple episodes ago. Anything on delivery before we wrap it up here? Or is it just sort of an 8-week and you run them through?
Yeah, so I do an 8-week program and then a follow-on month of support after that, which I've just added because I could see that was needed from the first time. And it's weekly calls. It's very much in the realm of how John does it. So 90-minute calls every week. I also do little motivational audios in between, mindset stuff and any roadblocks or any sort of issues that people are having live. I'll do an audio that week to help them with that they can just listen to whenever they want. So they have a little bit extra there. And yeah, we go through it together, maximum of 10 people on the program. There's actually 3 spots left if anybody's interested. So, just get in touch with me with that. And I'm actually looking at, creating a school so that they can stay in touch and get ongoing resources and interviews and things to help them on the journey, because really it's a starting point. And then, we all need support after that as well. So I'm looking at what that might look like.
Very smart. I love it. Okay, MamaJ, thank you so much for being here with me. Where do you want to send people? If they do want to get in touch with you or follow you, where's the best place?
Yeah, so if they Google Jacqueline Hollows, I come up on the first 3-4 pages, so you can usually find me. But Jacqueline at jbhollows.co.uk. And I've got a great crash course that people can do if they sign up to that, and it's free. And I'd love for your audience to take advantage of that.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'll get that link from you and I'll drop it in the show notes. So guys, you can go find that below this, where if you're listening on YouTube, or in the show notes if you're on audio, Spotify, Apple, wherever that is. But that's been a wrap. I'm very appreciative that we have MamaJ Hollows on today. Thank you so much for your time. And guys, we'll see you next week for another episode of The Real Coach Show by Proclaim Podcasting. See you then.